Now we're looking at the section on treatments. Can an antibiotic kill a virus? No, an antibiotic cannot kill a virus. Virus is not alive. It can't be treated with antibiotics. Antibiotics are used to treat bacterial infections. Virus has to run its course. You only treat the symptoms. You can treat the sore throat. You can treat the fever, but you cannot kill a virus. You cannot treat a viral disease with antibiotics. Antibiotics are only used for bacteria. So if you have a question on your EOG about antibiotics, it's 100% referring to bacteria. Antiviral drugs can be used to help with viral diseases, and they can help to slow the production of new viruses. You can also get vaccines. So a vaccine is going to be a shot, and that will help you prevent from getting a specific viral disease. What does it mean to be antibiotic resistant? So antibiotic resistance is going to refer to a bacteria's ability to resist antibiotics so that it will not be killed in the presence of an antibiotic. An example of that is MRSA. There's also a tuberculosis strain that is resistant to bacteria, so there are several, or to the antibiotics. So there are several different types of diseases that are going to be resistant to specific types of antibiotics. So those are pretty nasty. How does a vaccine work? So a vaccine is going to contain a weakened form of the virus, and that will be injected into a person's body, and that will stimulate the body to produce its own antibody. So it's going to cause the body's immune system to make antibodies that destroy the pathogen. Squish that in. Biotechnology is your next section. So biotechnology is going to be using living organisms. So bio is life. So biotechnology, your first blank here. So using manipulation of living things, it's changing living things in order to make more useful products. Selective breeding is one example, and we talked about artificial selection when we were studying evolution. That selective breeding is an example of artificial selection, how humans are having an impact on evolution. So that is breeding organisms to produce offspring that have beneficial traits, that have specific types of traits. The Belgian blue cow is an example that we talked about that has a ton of muscle mass and is a huge, tall cow. So it was bred to specifically have those traits. Just like you hear about people breeding cats or breeding dogs to exhibit specific traits like the fluffiest fur and the cutest little squishy nose and pokey tail or whatever. So those are specific traits that they want to be exhibited, and so they are bred to have those specific traits. Genetically modified organisms, GMOs, genetic modification, genetic engineering, it's all referring to the same thing. GMOs is referring to biotechnology. So GMO is going to be when you've changed the genetic material of a living organism, and that's going to be used a lot of times to make medications or different types of treatments for diseases. So that will treat disease. It can be used to help improve crops. So that's another example. So an example of improving crops would be producing crops that are resistant to certain pests, that have genes that will allow them to be resistant to different types of organisms. Chewing on them basically has built-in pesticides, and also drought resistant is another one too. So gene splitting is another example of genetic modification, where the genes from one organism is going to be inserted into the DNA of another organism, and that can be useful in helping to produce crops that are resistant to drought, for example, resistant to pests and things like that. So basically producing better crops. A lot of careers are related to biotechnology. So if you have a question on your EOG that asks you about careers, it's going to be referring probably to biotechnology. So microbiologist, biotechnologist, environmental biologist, water quality analyst is another example. Lots of things related to agriculture, agricultural research, write that one in. So those are examples of careers that are going to be related to biotechnology, are going to benefit from biotechnology. Economic benefits, North Carolina. So anytime you see the word economics, economics equals money. It's referring to money in some way. So that could be by generating jobs and generating products that are useful, that you can use or you can sell to help make money. Conducting research, NC State, Duke, UNC system like UNC Chapel Hill, those are a lot of places that are doing a lot of research with biotechnology. So helping farmers to improve their crop yield. So a crop yield is just talking about the amount of crops that are produced. So if you get more crops, you can sell more crops and you can make more money. Ethical issues. Anytime you have the word ethics, ethics is referring to right versus wrong. Okay, right versus wrong. So ethical issues, cloning is one example of a controversial ethical issue, if it's right or wrong to clone an organism. Also being concerned about the safety of that. So some people are worried that scientists are going to try and clone humans. Safety is an issue, whether it's safe to eat genetically modified foods or use genetically modified products, and is it right or wrong to alter genes or DNA? Right or wrong? Ethics. It's referring to ethics. Impact for agriculture. So can crops be produced in a specific way that will allow them to be resistant to frost, resistant to drought, resistant to insects, specific diseases. So we're going to put insects. Drought is another one. And improving the crop yields for a farmer. So that's crop yields is the amount of crops produced. And producing better tasting crops like the super tomato. So there's lots of different types of modifications, particularly that can be made for agriculture or agricultural products. And then the last thing here at the bottom is different types of carcinogens and mutagen. Your stem carcin means cancer. Gen means producing. So literally producing cancer. And then mutagen, this first part, muta refers to mutation, and again, gen refers to producing. So carcinogen is producing cancer, mutagen is producing mutations, specifically mutations in the DNA. So the first blank here is cancer. Cancer is a non-infectious disease. It can be genetic. It can be caused by exposure to carcinogens, which are chemicals that will cause cancer. Asbestos is an example. So asbestos is a chemical substance that when it's breathed in can cause lung cancer. UV radiation, so UV rays, exposure to that can cause skin cancer. And tobacco products, exposure to different tobacco products can cause mouth cancer. It can cause throat cancer, lung cancer even. Mutagen, so muta is referring to mutate. So a mutagen is going to mutate. It's going to change the DNA, and it causes genetic mutations. It causes problems with the DNA. Mutagens are going to include UV radiation, X-rays, radioactive substances like being exposed to uranium, for example. And there's other chemicals as well that are mutagens. So an example of another chemical is thalidomide. So that was a medication. Thalidomide was a medicine. It was used in the 1950s as a sleeping pill. And people that took it that were pregnant ended up having babies, unfortunately, that had birth defects because of that chemical. They didn't know that it was harmful. So it caused a lot of birth defects in many babies. And because of that, it's considered a mutagen, because it mutated and changed the DNA.